I was 22 years old and I sold a 13 million house in Sierra Blanca. But I didn't sell it because I was an expert. I sold it because I stumbled by accident on this particular principle. Alternatives define power. Behind any number, there's a person with a story that we don't know. Momentum wins more deals than pressure. The best negotiators, the best salespeople are not the aggressive, pushy people, are the patient ones, the ones that listen, the ones that know these techniques, and the ones that combine all of their knowledge and skills with genuine care and looking for the interest, what is the best for the buyer. Last day we spoke about the psychology, like understanding people, emotions, building your authority. And today we're going to talk about more mechanics. Once you understand people, you need to understand how deals happen, right? But before I do that, I want to start with an image, a picture of an iceberg. Visualize it, and you all know how it looks. The tip of the iceberg, the part that we see above water, is actually the smallest part, and the biggest mass of the iceberg is below water, hidden. And I really like this reference connected with our job, because I do believe that the majority of the real estate agents, they operate above water, at the tip of the iceberg. When the market picks up, they pick up. When the market slows down, they slow down. And the reason of their success, especially all the failures and all the slowing down, is always the market. But the top professionals, the ones that build their skills, their knowledge, their client database consistently and consciously with daily efforts, I believe they are able to operate underwater, where the biggest mass, the biggest potential is. They are constantly anticipating themselves. They're constantly building up momentum, building up clients that trust them, creating deals out of almost nowhere and seeing opportunities that other people don't see. Of course, this is difficult. And below water, it's cold, it's scary, and the big sharks are there. But if you consciously decide that that's the path that you want to take, which very few actually do, and you're prepared to invest the necessary hard work and consistency and go through those complicated challenges to be able to learn to operate underwater, the reward will come. And when it gets very tough, because it will, remember this picture of the iceberg and where you want to be. Because the reward will come, but it also will come later than you think. Now, back to our negotiation sales. I'll start with principle number 5, because the last day we had 4 principles. The principle of understanding in which range a deal can happen. Any potential deal exists within a certain range of price, of time, money element, and other relevant factors if they exist. And understanding this at the early stage of a negotiation is crucial. What is the maximum price that the buyer is prepared to pay? Not the one that he says, the real one. And what is the minimum price that the owner is prepared to accept? Not the one that he says, but the real one. And you get to know this more by listening than talking. And when those 2 points overlap, a deal is possible. When they don't overlap, no matter how much you try, the deal will not happen. I know it's obvious, but paying attention to this and trying to understand it at an early stage of a negotiation is crucial, because there are certain deals that will not happen. And many people dedicate days, weeks, all their energy and all their attention on deals that are not meant to happen, whilst they could have had most of their attention somewhere else where a deal can happen. I had a case from an opposite angle recently where I was presented a deal in Zagaleta that on paper looked totally impossible. Like 99% of the people would say, don't even try, 99% of the owners will not even listen. But I knew that this specific owner, the range of his variety of options and opportunities were so complex and so different and so particular that I was able to shape the buyer's position within those ranges that I had the information, and eventually bring 2 people together that everybody would have said it's impossible. Again, you get this kind of information by more listening than talking. The next principle, alternatives define power. When a negotiation starts, one of the best questions that you can ask yourself is, what will happen if this deal doesn't go through? Does the vendor have other options? He has other buyers? Does he have real urgency? Superficial not? Does the buyer have other options? Is this his only option? What mental state are they in due to their circumstances? Because on the surface, when the exchange of number happens, it may seem that the power of the negotiation is the same. But underneath, if one side has time, options, and no urgency, and the other side has no time, no other buyers, and urgency, the power of the negotiation is totally different. And the best agents are able to notice this and understand at an early stage. Because again, maybe you're fighting and stressing and going crazy with a vendor that then you realize actually never had any other option and was going to accept it anyway, just needed the time. Or you're comfortably negotiating on behalf of the buyer and you didn't realize that he had two other options that he likes as equal and that he can easily walk away. So many times, if you want to have a successful negotiation, what you need to pay attention to is to the things that are happening outside of the deal. I have a great story to show that. 2013, I was 22 years old. I was already 4 years in the company. And I sold a 13 million house in Sierra Blanca. But I didn't sell it because I was an expert. I sold it because I stumbled by accident on this particular principle. The owner listed his price at around 24 million in 2008 before the crisis. And since then, every year was dropping the price to eventually coming to 16 million in 2013. My buyer offered 13 million, and after very intense negotiations, nothing happened. The buyer didn't want to increase his offer. He had loads of options in that market, and the vendor did not want to accept that number. He truly believed his house was worth 20. So after the negotiation died for a week, I appeared at the door of the house unannounced on a Friday evening. The owner opened surprised, and I said, I just want to know how you are and what are we going to do now that we lost this buyer. What followed after that was a 3-hour monologue where the owner told me about his life, about the story of the house, about what led him to have to sell, about the debt, about medical conditions that were making him to sell, totally underpriced, that he truly believed he still had this mental hook, that he believed that his house was worth 20. And through those 3 hours, himself, he came to the conclusion that he cannot afford to lose this buyer. So at roughly 11 p.m. that Friday evening, with tears in his eyes, he told me, accept the 13 million offer. Same weekend, Sunday, we had a 10% non-refundable paid and the deal was sealed. What struck me the most in those experiences was to see a man crying because he's going to accept 13 million euros. That's kind of stayed with me in very different ways. One of them was to also remember that behind any number, there's a person with a story that we don't know. Next principle. Momentum wins more deals than pressure. Once the offer is agreed, or even before, we can go through a long period of time. And if the momentum dies, doubts settle in, many reasons appear out of nowhere why not to make this deal happen. So momentum is like a rhythm, and the best agents, they feel it, and they're able to, in a natural way, to keep that momentum running by asking follow-up questions, by agreeing a meeting before the current meeting has finished, just simply by not letting silence to settle in. Because silence, same like time, can kill deals. Some agents become very nervous and they start pressuring the client, and that can kill deals. But keeping the momentum alive, keeping the interest, is also a very rare skill that the best agents practice and understand. The next principle. The first number introduced shapes the whole conversation. This is a very powerful psychological anchor. The first number that is introduced, as in an offer, or even, look at it from the vendor side, the price at which he lists the property, can create a very powerful psychological anchor that defines how the whole exchange of negotiation will happen and can define what will be the final price agreed. When you introduce the first credible number, all other counter offers are going to be based on that number, not on the value of the house. But here's the mistake most people do. People hear this theory and they say, great, so what I'm going to do? As a buyer, I'm going to go with a very, very low offer to give me lots of room to negotiate. I'm going to create a psychological anchor with a very low number. As a vendor, I'm going to list my price very high and create a psychological anchor for the other party to start from my number. But if the number is not credible to both sides, it has no power. It is not a psychological anchor, and it can destroy your power of negotiation. Vendors, buyers, they all investigate the market, they see comparables, and they all know what more or less is a credible number and what is just a total lowball. Psychological anchor can have a lot of power, but if used correct. If a vendor prices his property overpriced, the buyers reject that number automatically. It creates no anchor whatsoever, and eventually the property is overpriced for months, if not a year. Then the owner reduces the price to what is a credible number, but then the buyers know that he's been waiting, and the shift of power in that negotiation already changed. A buyer that decides to go with a very low offer and doesn't even get a counter offer from the owner has dismissed that number. It created no psychological anchor, and one of two things happen. The owner decides first, either you are not a serious buyer, or second, he says, you started very low, so probably you have a lot of room. In any case, what happens with that power exchange of negotiation? The owner settles in a comfortable way and negotiates with you totally different. So it's a very powerful technique, but it needs to be used wisely. And when you use it, make sure you can explain the number and make it credible to both sides. Then, principle number 9, the last one, fear of scarcity and loss. When a property has many comparables, the buyer has many options. When the property becomes unique to a buyer, for whatever reason, maybe it's extremely private, or maybe to him it's unique, something happens. The way the conversation settles also changes, because the buyer no longer asks himself psychologically the question, do I want this property? Because it's unique, the question changes automatically. The question becomes, am I prepared to lose this property? And that's something very powerful there happening, because the way we are all people are wired is that we are far more scared of losing something than we are excited about gaining something. And the best agents, they understand these dynamics. They understand when a client is still comparing options, or when he actually found his house and he's just seeing other options to win time to make the decision happen. We see this sometimes in our market. Marbella real estate market, most of the properties are sold with a certain discount. It's part of the rules of the game. But once in a while, we see a property sold at asking price. When a buyer, there were several buyers bidding on the property, and suddenly the fear of loss to one of them was so big that he went to a certain extent, to a level that he at the beginning didn't want to go to, and even paid asking price. And the agents that understand this, they're able to, not through pressure, but when they see that the property is unique to the client, in an elegant way to introduce the conversation about what will happen if we lose this property, and open up this information to the buyer so he clearly understands, and if it is unique, the fear of loss will kick in and simply make the decision easier. As a final thought, what we're talking about today are tools, and as always, tools in the wrong hands, they don't work as much. As in agents that know the tools but still lose deals. Why? Because at critical moments, at the crucial moments, they make it about themselves. They make it about being right, about winning an argument, about their ego, about the commission. And then the client feels that. The best negotiators, the best salespeople are not the aggressive, pushy people, are the patient ones, the ones that listen, the ones that know these techniques, and the ones that combine all of their knowledge and skills with genuine care and looking for the interest, what is the best for the buyer or the vendor. So in the end, after today's conversation and exchange of this additional 5 principles, I think the message still remains the same as it was from last day. The best salespeople are the ones that win the trust of their clients. And when you work like that consistently underwater, You build up a reputation with your clients, and that becomes one of your most powerful assets as a real estate agent. And that's what we're building here. And also, the knowledge, the skills, the hard work that you're putting in. Think of it also that this is what will protect you no matter what happens in the world in the future, because in the next 10 days, we're going to see a lot of change. Thank you very much.